Tonight, imagine a planet turning quietly around a distant star. It has clouds, continents, liquid water, and a thin blue edge of atmosphere. From hundreds of light years away, it resembles a place where life could begin. Yet the planet may already be dead. Its oceans may have lasted only a few million years. Its atmosphere may be thinning one particle at a time. Its climate may be drifting toward a threshold from which it will never return. Or perhaps life did begin there. Perhaps microscopic organisms filled its oceans, altered its rocks, and changed the chemistry of its air. Then the world cooled, dried, overheated, or lost the conditions those organisms needed. No cities ever appeared. No signal was sent. From Earth, that entire history would look exactly like nothing. This is the unsettling possibility inside tonight's title. The universe may be empty because survival is almost impossible. Not because planets are absent. Astronomers have already confirmed thousands of worlds beyond the solar system, and the true number in the Milky Way must be vastly larger. Not because every distant world is obviously hostile. Some are rocky, some orbit where surface water could exist under suitable conditions, and not because humanity has searched the entire sky and found it empty. Our searches have examined only a small portion of the possible stars, frequencies, signals, times, and technologies another civilization might use. The contradiction is simple. Worlds appear common. Confirmed life is known only on Earth. Confirmed technology is known only from us. By the end of tonight, you're going to understand why the hardest part of life may not be appearing, but remaining alive through every planetary, biological, evolutionary, and technological bottleneck long enough to become detectable. Before we get started, if you love exploring the depths of space as much as we do, take a second to like the video or subscribe. It's a simple action, but it helps this channel reach more curious minds like yours. Now, let's begin. The first correction is the most important. Silence is not the same as emptiness. A dark window does not prove that no one lives inside the house. The curtains may be closed. The light may be weak. We may have looked at the wrong moment. In the same way, the absence of a confirmed extraterrestrial signal does not prove that no living worlds exist. It tells us only that no search has yet produced evidence strong enough to survive every ordinary explanation. The universe gives us almost no easy way to inspect life directly. Even the nearest stars are so distant that their planets usually appear not as landscapes, but as changes in light. A planet may dim its star as it crosses in front of it. Its gravity may pull the star slightly toward and away from us. A telescope may separate a faint point of planetary light from the much brighter glare beside it. From those measurements, scientists can estimate a planet's orbit, size, mass, temperature range, and sometimes parts of its atmospheric chemistry. But none of those properties alone can tell us that something is alive. Even the phrase habitable planet can mislead us. In astronomy, habitable often means that a world satisfies a limited physical condition, especially the possibility that liquid water could exist on its surface. The habitable zone is therefore a useful first filter, not a certificate of biology. A planet may orbit at the right distance and still have no atmosphere. It may have too much atmosphere. Its star may flood it with flares. Its water may be trapped underground, frozen beneath ice, or lost to space before life begins. Earth makes these dangers easy to underestimate. Life occupies ocean trenches, dry valleys, polar ice, acidic pools, deep rock, and places where sunlight never reaches. Seen from inside a living planet, biology can appear almost unstoppable. But Earth is not only a demonstration of resilience, it is also a record of narrow escapes. Our planet formed with enough mass to hold an atmosphere. It maintained liquid water across immense stretches of time. Its interior remained active enough to recycle material. Life survived impacts, volcanic upheaval, global climate change, shifting oxygen levels, and several mass extinctions. Complex organisms appeared only after billions of years of interaction among geology, chemistry, climate, and evolution. This does not prove that Earth is impossibly rare. We have only one inhabited world to study. A sample of one cannot tell us whether life usually begins quickly, whether complex cells are common, whether intelligence often evolves, or whether technological societies normally last for centuries or millions of years. Yet that uncertainty cuts in both directions. It prevents us from declaring that the universe is full of life. It also prevents us from declaring that it is empty. Between those claims lies a more useful question. How many separate things must go right, and keep going right, before a living planet becomes visible to another world? Consider the chain. A stable planetary system must form. At least one world must receive useful chemistry and lasting energy gradients. Those conditions must remain long enough for self-replicating chemistry to appear. Early life must survive impacts, atmospheric change, stellar activity, and competition. It must become more complex. Complex life must persist long enough for intelligence to evolve. Intelligence must develop technology without destroying the systems supporting it. Finally, that civilization must produce a signal or structure that crosses space, reaches us while we are looking, and appears in a form we recognize. Neither at any link can produce the same final observation: silence. This is why the title says the universe may be empty. The word may carries the scientific weight. It leaves room for planets crowded with microbes, civilizations separated by time, technologies we cannot identify, and signals too weak or brief to detect. It leaves room for forms of intelligence that never build transmitters and for successful societies that become quieter as they mature. Still, the silence remains worth explaining. If technological civilizations were common, long-lived, expansive, and easy to detect, the age and size of the Milky Way would offer many opportunities for evidence to reach us. The fact that nothing has been confirmed may mean that one of those assumptions is wrong. Perhaps civilizations are uncommon. Perhaps they are quiet. Perhaps they do not expand. Perhaps their detectable periods are short. Or perhaps the difficult step comes much earlier, on planets that look promising from a distance but cannot preserve stable conditions long enough. We will follow that possibility from the outside inward. We will begin with the worlds themselves, how they form, gain or lose water and atmosphere, change with their stars, and become uninhabitable without leaving an obvious trace. Then we will move into biology, where survival does not automatically create complexity, and complexity does not guarantee intelligence. Later, we will reach the most uncomfortable link, when a species becomes powerful enough to announce itself and powerful enough to damage its own future. For now, hold only the first correction. The sky is silent. But silence is not a census. It is an incomplete measurement made by one young technological species, using a small collection of instruments during a very brief interval of cosmic time. The universe may be empty. It may also be alive in ways that remain hidden. But if survival requires every link in a long chain to remain unbroken, emptiness would not need one universal catastrophe. It could emerge quietly, world by world, through ordinary failures accumulating across billions of years. And the first of those failures may occur before life has any chance to begin. That first failure begins with a distinction that sounds small but changes the entire search. A planet can exist without being a home. This is easy to forget because modern astronomy has made planets feel almost ordinary. Missions have revealed worlds around many kinds of stars. Some are larger than Earth, some smaller than Neptune, some hot enough to melt rock, and some cold enough for gases to freeze onto their surfaces. Planetary systems are not rare exceptions arranged around a few fortunate suns. They appear to be a normal consequence of star formation. But abundance is not suitability. When astronomers first examine a distant world, they usually begin with properties that can be measured from far away: its orbit, mass, diameter, the energy it receives from its star, and sometimes the gases above it. These measurements help identify promising targets. They do not reveal a finished habitat. The best-known first filter is the habitable zone. This is the range of distances around a star where a rocky planet might maintain liquid water on its surface, provided the planet has a suitable atmosphere. The final part of that definition matters more than the phrase itself. The habitable zone does not guarantee water. It does not guarantee an atmosphere. It certainly does not guarantee life. It describes where surface water is physically possible under a limited set of conditions. A planet too close to its star may absorb more energy than it can release. Water evaporates more quickly. Water vapor then strengthens the greenhouse effect, trapping additional heat and causing still more evaporation. If the feedback continues, oceans can disappear. Ultraviolet light can break water molecules apart in the upper atmosphere. Lightweight hydrogen can then escape into space. A planet farther away faces the opposite problem. Water freezes. Ice reflects more incoming light than dark ocean or rock. The surface cools. More ice spreads, and still more light is reflected. A world may enter a state in which most of its surface remains frozen, even though liquid water survives beneath the ice or near sources of internal heat. These outcomes may sound like simple questions of distance. They are not. Venus and Earth make that clear. The two planets are similar in size and formed in the same planetary system, yet Venus has a dense carbon dioxide atmosphere and a surface hot enough to soften lead. Open surface oceans cannot survive there. Earth, receiving less solar energy and following a very different atmospheric and geological history, preserved water and a climate in which complex life eventually developed. Mars provides another contrast. It lies farther from the Sun and contains clear evidence that liquid water once moved across its surface. Ancient valleys, water-altered minerals, and sedimentary structures show that early Mars was not always the dry, cold landscape seen today. But the modern Martian atmosphere has a surface pressure below 1% of Earth's. Liquid water exposed there is unstable. Depending on temperature and pressure, it tends to freeze, evaporate, or briefly do both. 3 rocky planets orbit the same star. All 3 contain evidence that water mattered. Only one currently maintains large, stable surface oceans. The difference was not produced by distance alone. Planetary mass affects whether a world can hold gases against escape. Atmospheric composition controls how efficiently heat is trapped and moved. Clouds can cool a planet by reflecting light or warm it by slowing the loss of infrared energy. Rotation influences winds and circulation. Oceans store and transport heat. Volcanoes release gases. Weathering removes some gases from the atmosphere and locks them into minerals. The star itself changes with age, gradually altering the energy received by its planets. Habitability is therefore not a fixed address. It is a continuing balance. A planet must receive energy without being overwhelmed by it. It must keep enough atmosphere to maintain pressure and distribute warmth, but not so much greenhouse gas that the surface becomes uninhabitable. It must preserve useful chemistry without allowing that chemistry to settle permanently into forms life cannot access. And it must continue doing this while its star, interior, orbit, atmosphere, and surface all evolve. Even liquid water can mislead us. A planet completely covered by a deep global ocean might seem ideal. Yet exposed land and shallow coastlines may help circulate minerals between rock, water, and atmosphere. On a world with an ocean hundreds of kilometers deep, extreme pressure may create unusual layers of ice at the bottom, separating liquid water from the rocky interior. The world could contain more water than Earth and still offer fewer opportunities for certain chemical cycles. The opposite can also be true. A mostly dry planet might remain temperate under conditions that would destabilize a wetter world. Less water vapor can mean a weaker greenhouse effect. Small reservoirs of water might survive underground, near the poles, or in sheltered regions. A planet does not need to resemble modern Earth perfectly to support life. But every alternative design creates its own limits. The star adds another layer. Small red dwarf stars can shine for extraordinarily long periods, giving nearby planets immense stretches of time, but their habitable zones lie close to the star. A planet in such a tight orbit may become tidally locked, keeping one hemisphere directed toward the star while the other faces permanent night. This does not automatically make the planet uninhabitable. A sufficiently thick atmosphere or ocean could transport heat from the day side to the night side. The greater problem may come earlier. Young red dwarfs can be highly active. Flares and high-energy radiation can heat a planet's upper atmosphere, drive chemical reactions, and help strip gases away. A world that later enters a long, calm period may already have lost much of the atmosphere or water it needed. Once again, a promising orbit does not guarantee a surviving habitat. This helps explain why the discovery of an Earth-sized planet in a habitable zone should inspire interest, not certainty. From dozens or hundreds of light years away, astronomers may know the planet's radius and orbital period, while knowing almost nothing about its surface pressure, clouds, oceans, magnetic environment, geological activity, or history. Telescopes can sometimes study parts of exoplanet atmospheres by examining starlight that passes through them during a transit. Different gases absorb particular wavelengths, leaving subtle patterns in the recorded light. But even when a molecule is detected, its meaning depends on context. Water vapor is not life. Carbon dioxide is not life. Oxygen, although deeply connected to photosynthesis on Earth, can sometimes accumulate through non-biological processes. Methane can be produced by organisms, geology, or reactions involving water and rock. A single gas rarely settles the question. Scientists therefore look for combinations, imbalances, and planetary conditions that are difficult to maintain without continual activity. They must also rule out clouds, instrument effects, stellar contamination, and alternative chemistry. A biosignature is not simply an interesting molecule. It is an evidence-based argument that must survive several competing explanations. This makes the search slower, but also more honest. We are not searching merely for blue planets or warm planets. We are searching for worlds whose many systems work together: orbit, atmosphere, water, chemistry, geology, and stellar environment. A planet must not only enter a favorable state, it must remain within a useful range while every part of the system continues to change. Earth has managed that balance for billions of years, but not with perfect calm. Its climate has shifted. Continents have moved. Ice has covered large regions. Oxygen has transformed the atmosphere. Impacts and eruptions have disrupted ecosystems. Stability on a living planet does not mean that nothing changes. It means that change does not permanently eliminate every refuge and every path back. That may be the first serious survival test. The universe can produce countless planets without producing countless lasting homes. Many worlds may briefly contain liquid water. Some may support favorable chemistry for millions of years. A smaller number may preserve those conditions across the much longer intervals required for evolution to explore complex possibilities. From a distant telescope, each failed world may still look almost successful. A dry planet may preserve ancient river valleys. A frozen world may hide an ocean beneath ice. A scorched planet may retain traces of water in its atmosphere. Their present surfaces may be the remains of opportunities that opened and then closed. The silence of the universe may therefore begin not with civilizations destroying themselves, but with planets losing the ability to support anything that could one day build a transmitter. And before we can understand why some worlds keep that ability while others lose it, we must go back further, to the way a planet is assembled, the materials it receives, and the hidden advantages or weaknesses built into it from the beginning. Long before a planet can lose an ocean, freeze beneath ice, or develop an atmosphere capable of supporting life, its possibilities are being shaped inside a disk of dust and gas. A young star does not begin with finished worlds around it. It is surrounded by material left from its own formation. Tiny grains collide, stick, break apart and collide again. Some become pebbles, pebbles gather into larger bodies, and gravity gradually turns those bodies into the rocky and icy building blocks from which planets grow. In the warmer regions close to the star, rock and metal dominate. Farther out, beyond the region where water can freeze, ice becomes part of the solid material and increases what growing worlds can collect. The location of a planet's birth therefore helps determine its first inventory. A world assembled close to its star may begin relatively dry because much of the local water remains vapor rather than solid ice. A world assembled farther out may incorporate more frozen water and other volatile substances. But planets do not always remain where they began, and their materials do not stay inside neat zones. Gas, dust, pebbles, planetesimals, and growing planets all move through the disk. Larger bodies can scatter material inward or outward. The final planet may be a mixture of substances that originated across a wide range of distances. Water can travel inward on ice-coated pebbles. When those pebbles cross a warmer boundary, their ice becomes vapor, but the route can be interrupted. Rings and pressure traps in the disk can slow or stop the inward drift. A planet may therefore be born dry, not because its star lacks water, but because the pathways carrying water never reached it efficiently. The opposite outcome is also possible. A planet may acquire so much water that almost its entire surface becomes ocean. That sounds generous from the perspective of biology, but habitability is not a contest to collect the largest ocean. The amount of exposed land, the depth of the water, the exchange between mantle and surface, and the circulation of nutrients all change with a planet's water inventory. A world can contain everything life needs in total and still keep too much of it out of reach. Earth's own water history is not settled into one simple account. Some water may have been present in the materials from which Earth formed. More may have arrived in volatile, rich bodies scattered inward from colder parts of the solar system. Hydrogen from the original solar nebula may also have contributed a smaller share. Different classes of early bodies carried different amounts of water, and the history of heating mattered. Large planetesimals that melted and separated into cores and mantles may have lost much of their water before they could deliver it. Smaller, less altered bodies may have preserved more. A habitable planet also requires useful chemical elements to remain available in places where chemistry and eventually biology can reach them. Carbon forms the structural framework of known life. Nitrogen is essential to proteins and genetic material. Phosphorus helps cells store and transfer energy and forms part of the backbone of DNA and RNA. Yet possessing these elements is not enough. Their location and chemical form matter. During the violent growth of a rocky planet, heat from impacts, compression, and radioactive decay can melt large portions of the interior. Dense, iron-rich material sinks toward the center, forming a metallic core. Lighter silicate material remains above it as mantle and crust. This differentiation creates the planet's internal architecture, but it can also remove biologically important elements from the surface system by drawing them into the core. A planet may contain all the phosphorus life needs and still keep most of it beneath thousands of kilometers of rock. Two rocky planets can therefore have similar sizes, temperatures, and distances from similar stars, while carrying very different accessible supplies of essential elements. One may hold them in crust, ocean, and atmosphere, where cycles can move them through living systems. Another may hold much of the same total material deep inside an unreachable core. From space, both may look equally promising. The planet's early impacts add further uncertainty. Collisions are the normal machinery of planet formation. They can increase a planet's mass, deliver volatile, rich material, melt the surface, change its rotation, remove part of an atmosphere, or reject material entirely. The result depends on the size, speed, composition, and angle of the colliding bodies. Water may arrive and then be driven away as vapor. Carbon and nitrogen may be delivered, buried, or lost. A core may form in a way that leaves important chemistry available, or it may lock that chemistry below the surface. The order matters as much as the ingredients. A volatile, rich impact before a planet finishes its hottest growth may deliver material that is later lost. The same impact after the surface is cooled may add substances that remain. A giant planet forming early can disturb the disk, redirecting water-rich bodies toward the inner system or preventing some material from passing inward. A planet is therefore not assembled from a universal recipe. It inherits the composition of its star and disk, but also the consequences of timing, migration, collision, heating, differentiation, and chance. By the time its surface is cooled enough for oceans or stable chemistry, many of its future limits may already be in place. This is the deeper meaning of being born correctly. It does not mean being created as a perfect copy of Earth. There may be many workable arrangements. It means receiving enough of the right materials, avoiding crippling excesses, and keeping biologically useful elements accessible rather than losing them to space or burying them permanently in the interior. The acceptable range may be wide for simple life and much narrower for a biosphere capable of surviving billions of years. The universe may form rocky planets easily, while rarely producing the internal histories that allow them to remain chemically generous. And even a planet that begins with water, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, internal heat, and a promising orbit has only received its starting supply. The next struggle is keeping it. Once the planet-forming disk clears and the young world stands exposed beside its star, radiation, gravity, heat, chemistry, and time begin working on the atmosphere above it. What formation provided, space can slowly take away. An atmosphere may feel permanent from the ground. It presses against every surface, carries sound, moves clouds, softens temperature changes, and makes an open ocean possible. Yet, on the scale of a planet, an atmosphere is not a sealed shell. Its uppermost particles are already touching space, and every one of them is moving. Temperature is a measure of that motion. Gas molecules do not all travel at the same speed. Most remain securely bound, but a small fraction move much faster than the average. Near the thin upper boundary of an atmosphere, a lightweight particle can occasionally move fast enough to escape the planet's gravity without colliding with another particle and being redirected downward. This is thermal escape. Hydrogen is especially vulnerable because it is the lightest element. When ultraviolet radiation breaks water molecules apart in the upper atmosphere, the hydrogen produced can be heated and lost to space. Over immense spans of time, the gradual loss of hydrogen can represent the loss of enormous quantities of water. The strength of the planet's gravity matters. A massive world requires a faster particle to escape than a smaller world does. Temperature matters because hotter upper atmospheres contain faster-moving particles. Composition matters because light gases escape more readily than heavy ones. The fate of an atmosphere is therefore controlled not by one property, but by the relationship between planetary mass, atmospheric temperature, molecular weight, and the energy supplied by the star. A young star can make this struggle much harder. Young stars often produce stronger ultraviolet and X-ray radiation than they will later in life. That high-energy light is absorbed in the upper atmosphere, where it breaks molecules apart, removes electrons from atoms, and raises the temperature of the surrounding gas. If the heating becomes intense enough, the upper atmosphere can expand outward. Gas that was once held close to the planet occupies a larger region, where gravity is weaker and interaction with the stellar wind becomes easier. The stellar wind is a continuous flow of charged particles moving outward from a star. It does not behave like ordinary wind passing across a landscape. It interacts electrically and magnetically with the ionized upper atmosphere. Atmospheric atoms can be charged, accelerated, and carried away. Energetic particles can also strike the atmosphere and transfer enough momentum to knock other atoms into space. The atmosphere can disappear one charged particle at a time, without the planet ever appearing to change from a distant telescope. Mars offers a physical record of what prolonged atmospheric erosion can do. Ancient river valleys, lake basins, water-altered minerals, and sedimentary deposits show that liquid water once persisted on its surface. That required conditions different from those found there now. Today, the Martian atmosphere is thin, the surface is cold, and exposed liquid water is generally unstable. The change did not happen in a single dramatic moment. Mars may have crossed a sequence of thresholds. Its relatively low gravity made atmospheric particles easier to remove than they are on Earth. As the atmosphere thinned, surface pressure and greenhouse warming weakened. Liquid water became less stable. Water moved into ice, minerals, underground reservoirs, and the upper atmosphere, where some of it was eventually lost. A small decline prepared the way for a larger one. Less atmosphere meant a colder surface. A colder surface supported less stable liquid water. Changes in water and atmospheric chemistry altered the climate further. The planet did not need to lose every molecule before its surface became hostile to long-lived open water. It is tempting to reduce this history to one lesson. Mars lost its atmosphere because it lacked a global magnetic field, while Earth survived because its magnetic field protected it. The reality is more complicated. A planetary magnetic field can redirect much of the stellar wind around the atmosphere and reduce some forms of direct interaction. But a magnetosphere also gathers energy over a region much larger than the planet and channels charged particles through magnetic cusps and polar regions. Earth itself loses atmospheric ions along magnetic field lines. A magnetic field is therefore not a perfect shield. Under some circumstances, it reduces loss. Under others, it reorganizes or even enhances certain forms of ion escape. The effect depends on field strength, atmospheric composition, stellar conditions, planetary gravity, and the escape mechanism being considered. Venus shows why no single rule is sufficient. It has no Earth-like global magnetic field, yet it retains an atmosphere far denser than Earth's. Its stronger gravity, heavy carbon dioxide atmosphere, upper atmospheric temperature, chemistry, volcanic history, and distance from the Sun all influence what escapes and what remains. Mars, Venus, and Earth show that atmospheric survival cannot be predicted by magnetism alone. The entire planetary system must be considered. An atmosphere is also not controlled only by loss to space. Volcanoes can replenish gases from the interior. Impacts can deliver or remove volatile material. Water reacts with rock. Carbon dioxide can dissolve in oceans, become trapped in minerals, or return through geological activity. Nitrogen can move among air, surface material, oceans, and living systems. Some gases are buried, others are released. A lasting atmosphere therefore requires a balance between sources and sinks. A planet may lose gas continuously and still retain a substantial atmosphere if its reservoirs and geological activity replace enough material. Another planet may experience only moderate escape, but become uninhabitable because important gases are locked into rock and never returned. Habitability depends not merely on how much atmosphere exists, but on its pressure, composition, circulation, chemistry, and ability to evolve without crossing a destructive threshold. The challenge becomes sharper around small red dwarf stars. Because these stars are dim, a planet must orbit close to receive enough energy for surface water. The same close orbit can expose it to intense X-rays, ultraviolet radiation, flares, and charged particles, particularly while the star is young. Repeated high-energy events can ionize upper atmospheres and drive oxygen and other particles away from worlds that appear, by orbital distance alone, to lie inside a habitable zone. This does not prove that planets around red dwarfs are lifeless. Thick atmospheres, oceans, magnetic environments, replenishment, and the exact history of stellar activity may change the outcome. But it shows again why a favorable location is only the opening condition. A world must hold on to what makes that location useful. The loss may be rapid during an active youth or almost imperceptibly slow across billions of years. It may remove an entire atmosphere, alter its chemistry, or reduce its pressure just enough to destabilize surface water. From far away, the planet may remain the same size and continue following the same orbit. The failure occurs in a layer too thin to see directly, where particles receive a little more energy than gravity can overcome. And even retaining an atmosphere is not the end of the test. The atmosphere must continue regulating temperature while the star brightens, continents move, volcanoes change, oceans circulate, and chemical cycles shift. It must recover from disturbance without settling permanently into runaway heat or global ice. Keeping the air is a battle. Keeping a habitable climate through deep time is an even longer one. Keeping a habitable atmosphere is not the same as keeping a habitable world. A planet can retain oceans, air, and useful chemistry, yet still move beyond the temperatures that allow those materials to work together. It may become trapped beneath ice, pushed into runaway heating, or left in a climate that changes too quickly for complex ecosystems to recover. The real test is not whether a planet becomes comfortable once. It is whether the planet can remain within a workable range while its star, rocks, oceans, atmosphere, and living systems continue to change. Earth has passed that test for more than 3 billion years, but it has not done so by remaining still. The sun has brightened. Continents have assembled and broken apart. Volcanic activity has varied. Atmospheric chemistry has been transformed. Ice has repeatedly advanced and retreated. Long-term habitability on Earth is better understood as controlled movement than permanent balance. The climate has wandered, sometimes dangerously, without remaining permanently outside the range in which liquid water and life could persist. The young sun makes this history especially puzzling. Stellar models indicate that the sun was significantly dimmer early in its history. With all other conditions held equal, the young Earth should therefore have been much colder. Yet the geological record preserves evidence of liquid water at the surface. This mismatch is known as the faint young sun paradox. It does not have one universally accepted solution, but greenhouse gases, atmospheric pressure, clouds, surface reflectivity, and long-term carbon cycling are among the processes that may have helped compensate for the weaker sunlight. One of the most important stabilizing ideas involves the slow exchange of carbon among the atmosphere, oceans, rocks, and interior. Volcanoes and other geological processes release carbon dioxide. Rainwater absorbs some of that gas and forms a weak acid. When the water moves across exposed silicate rock, chemical weathering changes the minerals and allows carbon to be carried toward the ocean, where it can become stored in carbonate material. Over geological time, some of that carbon enters the crust and may later return through tectonic and volcanic processes. The crucial feature is that weathering responds to climate. When a planet becomes warmer and wetter, many weathering reactions proceed more quickly. More carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere, weakening greenhouse warming and pushing the climate back toward cooler conditions. When the planet becomes colder or drier, weathering slows. If volcanic carbon dioxide continues to enter the atmosphere, the greenhouse effect can gradually strengthen and oppose the cooling. This carbonate-silicate feedback is often compared with a thermostat, but the comparison can be too reassuring. A thermostat inside a house has a chosen target and a working furnace. A planet has neither. Weathering depends on exposed rock, rainfall, temperature, erosion, ocean chemistry, tectonics, and the rate at which carbon returns from the interior. If continents are arranged differently, if volcanism weakens, if the surface dries, or if carbon becomes trapped in inaccessible reservoirs, the feedback may operate differently or fail to restore the previous climate. Other feedbacks can push in the opposite direction. As ice spreads, it reflects more sunlight than dark ocean or land. The surface cools, more ice forms, and reflection increases again. This ice albedo feedback can turn an initial cooling into a much larger one. Earth has experienced severe glaciations when ice may have reached very low latitudes. The exact extent of the ice and the details of recovery remain debated, but these episodes show that our planet approached climate states far removed from its modern appearance. Escape from such a state may have depended on another slow imbalance. If thick ice greatly reduced rainfall and exposed rock weathering, volcanic carbon dioxide could continue accumulating because one of its major removal pathways had weakened. Over time, the growing greenhouse effect could raise temperatures enough to begin melting the ice. Once darker ocean or land was exposed, more sunlight would be absorbed, and the same feedback would operate in reverse. Earth survived these transitions. Survival does not prove recovery was guaranteed. Long-term climate simulations show why chance may matter even when stabilizing feedbacks exist. A planet can possess mechanisms that usually resist disturbance and still receive the wrong sequence of events. An impact may arrive during a fragile climate interval. Volcanic replenishment may decline, while weathering remains strong. Continental arrangement may accelerate carbon removal. A stellar change may push the atmosphere beyond the range its existing feedbacks can correct. Each event might be survivable alone. Their timing may not be. Luck does not need to mean a miracle. It can mean avoiding ordinary events in the wrong order. Nothing announces the moment when a habitable interval becomes too short. The star also refuses to remain constant. Main sequence stars such as the Sun gradually brighten as they age. A stabilizing carbon cycle can respond for a time by lowering atmospheric carbon dioxide as warming increases weathering, but that response has limits. Carbon dioxide cannot decline indefinitely without affecting photosynthetic organisms. Increasing solar energy eventually strengthens water vapor feedbacks. Earth's precise future climate threshold remains uncertain, but the broad outcome is not. The surface habitability of our planet is temporary. Continued solar brightening will eventually push Earth beyond conditions that present life can tolerate. A habitable planet is therefore not parked inside a safe zone. It is moving through a corridor whose boundaries shift with stellar evolution, atmospheric chemistry, geological activity, and biological change. Feedbacks may widen that corridor. They cannot make it infinite. A planet that appears suitable during one observation may be entering its habitable interval, passing through the middle, or approaching the end. This may sharply reduce the number of worlds on which evolution has enough time. Simple chemistry may require stable liquid environments. The origin of life may require repeated cycles, concentrated ingredients, and sustained energy sources. Complex organisms may require billions of additional years. A planet that remains habitable for 10 million years could be extraordinary by ordinary geological standards and still close its window before biology progresses very far. Worlds may therefore fail without ever looking violently destroyed. Their oceans freeze beneath reflective ice. Their carbon cycle settles into the wrong balance. Their star slowly brightens. Their surface remains almost habitable until the last useful refuge disappears. And there is an even earlier uncertainty hidden inside every world that survives these climatic tests. Favorable conditions can persist for immense spans of time without guaranteeing that matter will become alive. Before life can endure climate, extinction, or evolution, chemistry must somehow cross the boundary into a system capable of maintaining itself and making imperfect copies. We know that boundary was crossed here. We do not yet know how difficult the crossing was. We know that boundary was crossed here. We do not know whether it was crossed easily. Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. The geological record supports the presence of microbial life more than 3 billion years ago, while claims of still earlier life remain harder to interpret because ancient rocks have been heated, altered, compressed, and contaminated across immense spans of time. The record gives us evidence that life appeared early in Earth's surviving history. It does not show us the first successful living system. That difference matters. It is often said that life appeared quickly on Earth. In one sense, this may be true. Once the surface became persistently habitable, biology seems to have been present relatively early. But Earth's ancient record is incomplete. We do not know when the first useful environments became available, how often prebiotic systems formed and failed, or how long evolution had already been operating before recognizable traces were preserved. One rapid success cannot tell us the probability of success. If someone enters a room after a difficult lock has already been opened, the open door does not reveal whether the correct key was found on the first attempt or after a million failures. Earth shows us the result. Most of the experiment has been erased. The raw ingredients themselves may not be the greatest obstacle. Carbon-bearing molecules occur in meteorites, comets, interstellar material, and planet-forming environments. Laboratory experiments have shown that amino acids, nucleotide-related compounds, membrane-forming molecules, and other biologically interesting substances can arise through non-biological chemistry under some plausible conditions. Nature can produce parts of life's molecular inventory without life already being present. But a pile of timber is not a house. Amino acids are not organisms. Nucleotides are not genetic systems. Fatty molecules forming a hollow sphere are not proof that a cell has appeared. Life requires relationships among processes that are individually difficult and mutually dependent. A living system must maintain a boundary between itself and its surroundings. It must obtain energy and use that energy to preserve an organized internal state. It must acquire raw material, carry out chemical reactions, remove harmful products, and repair damage. It must store information in some physical form. That information must influence how the system is built and maintained. Finally, the system must make imperfect copies capable of inheritance and evolution. Modern cells perform these tasks with extraordinary molecular machinery. DNA stores information. RNA transfers and interprets parts of it. Proteins accelerate reactions. Membranes regulate what enters and leaves. Energy-carrying molecules connect one process to another. But this creates a problem when we move backward toward the beginning. Proteins are constructed with the assistance of RNA and complex cellular machinery. RNA is produced and maintained by proteins. DNA requires proteins for accurate copying and repair. Membranes are built and regulated through metabolic pathways that already depend on enzymes. Modern life is a network in which each part supports the others. The first life could not have begun with the entire modern network already assembled. Origin of life research therefore asks how simpler systems might have performed several functions at once, or how separate chemical processes could have become connected gradually. One major family of ideas focuses on RNA because some RNA molecules can both store information and accelerate reactions. An early RNA-like system might therefore have carried hereditary information while also helping copies of itself form. This is the broad idea behind an RNA world. It is not a complete reconstruction of the origin of life. Researchers still need plausible pathways by which nucleotide components formed, became concentrated, joined into useful chains, copied without modern enzymes, and avoided rapid destruction. Other models begin with metabolism. Life may have emerged from networks of chemical reactions driven by persistent energy differences, perhaps where hot, chemically altered water met cooler ocean water near hydrothermal systems. Minerals could have concentrated molecules, accelerated reactions, and provided microscopic compartments. In this picture, organized chemical cycling may have preceded accurate genetic replication. But metabolism without heredity cannot undergo open-ended Darwinian evolution in the familiar sense. A chemical network may persist, grow, or reproduce patterns, yet it must somehow develop a reliable connection between what it does and what it passes on. Membranes introduce another possibility. Certain fatty molecules spontaneously assemble into bubbles in water because one part interacts readily with water while another avoids it. These compartments can trap molecules, maintain different internal conditions, and sometimes grow or divide under changing physical conditions. A primitive membrane would have allowed useful chemistry to remain together instead of dispersing into an ocean. Yet containment creates its own problems. Nutrients must enter, waste must leave. The membrane must be stable enough to protect the interior, but permeable enough to support chemistry. A compartment that grows and divides must also distribute useful molecules to its descendants. A membrane without metabolism or heredity remains only a container. The first successful living system may therefore have emerged through cooperation among several incomplete processes: compartments, energy-driven chemistry, catalytic molecules, and imperfect replication. None needed to resemble its modern biological equivalent, but they had to become linked closely enough that variation in one generation affected the success of the next. At that point, chemistry would begin to acquire history. Before inheritance, a useful molecule may form and disappear without leaving descendants. After inheritance, even imperfect copying allows successful features to persist, combine, and change. Natural selection does not need to design life in advance. It needs a population of systems that vary, reproduce, and pass some of those variations onward. The difficulty is reaching that threshold without already possessing the machinery created by evolution after the threshold was crossed. Researchers have proposed many environments that might help: volcanic pools, wet and dry shorelines, mineral surfaces, ice, hydrothermal vents, impact-generated systems, and networks of connected environments. Wet-dry cycles can concentrate molecules and encourage bonds to form. Ice can exclude salts and organics into small liquid channels. Mineral surfaces can hold reactants close together. Hydrothermal systems can provide chemical gradients in catalytic metals. These settings are not necessarily competing answers. Early Earth contained many environments, and materials could have moved among them. One location might produce a precursor, another might concentrate it, a third might place it inside a compartment. The origin of life may have been a planetary process rather than one reaction inside one perfect pool. That possibility is not probability. A laboratory can demonstrate that a reaction occurs under selected conditions. Researchers can control temperature, acidity, concentration, timing, purity, and the order in which materials are added. A natural environment offers no researcher to remove unwanted products or protect a fragile intermediate. The important question is not merely whether each step can happen, it is whether the steps can occur together, in a plausible sequence, while surviving interference from all the other chemistry taking place around them. No complete experiment has yet started with a convincing reconstruction of a lifeless early environment and produced an autonomous system that begins sustained Darwinian evolution. That does not mean the transition requires anything beyond chemistry and physics. It means the pathway remains unresolved. It also means we cannot responsibly assign it a cosmic frequency. Earth offers one known origin, assuming all existing life descends from the same early emergence, rather than several independent beginnings. Mars may once have had liquid water and useful chemistry, yet no life has been confirmed there. Ocean worlds may contain water, energy, and organic compounds, but we do not know whether their chemistry has ever crossed the living boundary. No second genesis has provided the comparison we need. The universe may be filled with planets that possess water, carbon, minerals, and energy, yet never connect them into a system capable of inheritance. Or the opposite may be true. Life may emerge wherever chemistry is given sufficient time and diversity. Earth cannot tell us which picture is correct, because every organism we can examine belongs to the successful side of the boundary. And even if that boundary is commonly crossed, the survival problem does not disappear. A world of microbes is already alive. It may remain alive for billions of years. But life has no promise to become larger, more complex, or more visible. On Earth, simple cells dominated almost the entire early history of the biosphere. The next bottleneck may not be beginning life. It may be escaping simplicity. For most of Earth's history, life was microscopic. That can sound as though early life was waiting to become something better. It was not. Bacteria and archaea are not unfinished animals. They are extraordinarily successful forms of life, capable of using sunlight, hydrogen, sulfur, iron, methane, and many other chemical opportunities. Their small size makes them adaptable, numerous, and able to occupy environments larger organisms could never tolerate. A planet covered only in microbes would not be a failed biological world. It might remain stable for billions of years. Its organisms could alter the atmosphere, build layered reefs, coat rocks, fill oceans, and produce gases detectable from space. Yet it might never produce forests, animals, nervous systems, or technology. Evolution does not move toward those outcomes because it has a destination. Natural selection preserves traits that improve reproduction under present conditions. If a simple cell is already well suited to its environment, becoming larger and more complicated may offer no advantage. Complexity also carries costs. A larger cell must move materials over greater distances, coordinate more reactions, copy more genetic information, control damage, and obtain enough energy to maintain itself. A group of cells faces additional problems. The cells must remain together. They must cooperate. They must divide tasks. They must reproduce as a collective. They must suppress individuals that consume shared resources without contributing. Laboratory evolution helps separate the first step from everything that follows. When single-celled organisms are exposed to predators or other selective pressures, some populations can evolve simple multicellular clusters. The larger groups may be harder to consume. Cells may remain attached after division or gather into temporary collectives. These results show that simple multicellularity need not require an impossible mutation. They do not show that tissues, development, circulation, and nervous systems will follow automatically. The deeper transition occurred earlier, inside the cell itself. Animals, plants, fungi, and many single-celled organisms belong to the eukaryotes. Their cells usually contain internal compartments and are far larger and more structurally elaborate than typical bacteria and archaea. Their genetic material is housed within a nucleus, and nearly all known eukaryotes possess mitochondria or reduced descendants of them. Those mitochondria began as bacteria. At some uncertain time during the origin of eukaryotic life, an archaeal host and a bacterial partner entered a lasting association. The bacterial partner became the ancestor of the mitochondrion. Genes moved between them. Their metabolisms became dependent. Selection began acting on the combined system. This was not merely one cell swallowing another. The partnership had to become stable enough for two once independent lineages to survive as one. The host had to regulate the internal partner. The partner had to reproduce in coordination with the host. Proteins encoded in one genetic compartment had to function inside another. Harmful conflicts had to be reduced. Useful exchanges had to be preserved. The surviving result transformed what cells could do. Mitochondria use controlled electron transfer to help produce adenosine triphosphate, the immediately usable energy currency of cells. Whether mitochondrial energy caused eukaryotic complexity or became one essential part of a longer transition remains debated. What is clear is that the last common ancestor of modern eukaryotes already possessed a highly developed cellular system. The intermediate stages have largely vanished. Microbes inhabited Earth for well over 1 billion years before unmistakably complex eukaryotic life became widespread. That delay does not prove eukaryogenesis is nearly impossible. The rock record is incomplete. Molecular dates are uncertain. Environmental conditions may have restricted earlier expansion. But Earth provides no evidence that the transition happened repeatedly. All known eukaryotes appear to descend from one successful ancestral lineage. Oxygen is often placed at the center of this story. Early Earth's atmosphere and oceans contained very little free oxygen. Cyanobacteria evolved oxygen-producing photosynthesis, using light to remove electrons from water and releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Yet oxygen production did not immediately create an oxygen-rich planet. Reduced volcanic gases, dissolved iron, sulfur compounds, and other materials consumed much of it. Only after many of those sinks were increasingly overcome could oxygen persist more widely in the atmosphere and surface ocean. Oxygen offered biological power, but it also brought danger. For organisms adapted to an oxygen-poor world, oxygen could damage proteins, membranes, and genetic material through reactive chemical products. Lineages that survived needed protective chemistry. Those that learned to use oxygen in respiration gained access to an efficient way of extracting energy from food, but only where oxygen was available. Even after atmospheric oxygen began to rise, much of the ocean may have remained oxygen-poor. Oxygen availability, nutrients, ecological competition, and planetary chemistry changed together rather than in a simple sequence. Oxygen was not an on switch for complexity. The same caution applies to multicellularity. It has evolved independently many times among eukaryotes. Cells can remain attached after division, or separate cells can gather into a collective. Some groups form only under stress and later disperse. Others reproduce as stable multicellular individuals. Becoming many cells is not the same as becoming a complex organism. Complex multicellularity requires reliable development. Cells must know when to divide, where to move, which genes to activate, and when to die for the larger body. Reproductive cells must be separated from cells performing temporary work. Mutations that benefit one cell but damage the organism must be controlled. Transport systems must carry nutrients inward and waste outward. As size increases, simple diffusion becomes inadequate. None of these challenges makes complex life impossible. Earth solved them in several different lineages. But Earth also shows how much living success can exist without solving them. Microbes appeared early, spread widely, transformed the planet, and survived every mass extinction. Large organisms arrived much later and remain dependent on microbial chemistry within oceans, soils, bodies, and the atmosphere. The enduring foundation of Earth's biosphere is not animal life. It is the invisible world beneath it. A distant planet may therefore be fully alive and remain quiet. Its microbes may never encounter an environment that favors larger cells. It may never produce the particular symbiosis that creates a eukaryote-like lineage. It may form simple groups without evolving stable development. Or complexity may arise, then disappear when oxygen, nutrients, climate, or ecology changes. Survival does not push life upward through a ladder. It preserves whatever can continue. And even when complexity appears, it must arrive during a planetary window wide enough to let evolution use it. The next question is not only whether difficult transitions can occur, it is whether a world gives them enough time, energy, and environmental opportunity before that window closes. Enough time, energy, and environmental opportunity. Those conditions lead to one of the most important disagreements in astrobiology. When a major evolutionary transition appears late in Earth's history, does that mean the transition itself was extremely improbable? Or does it mean the planet was not ready for it earlier? The first possibility is described through the hard steps model. The model begins with a simple observation. Technological intelligence appeared only after most of Earth's habitable history had passed. If several essential transitions each had a very low probability of occurring during the time available, then a successful planet would tend to complete them late. Observers can exist only on the rare worlds where every required step happened before the window closed. Possible steps have included the origin of life, oxygen-producing photosynthesis, eukaryotic cells, complex multicellularity, and technological intelligence. The exact list is not secure. Different versions identify different transitions and estimate different numbers. The appeal is clear. A planet may survive for billions of years and still fail because evolution never completes the sequence. One rare transition occurs. The next does not. A world of microbes remains a world of microbes until its oceans vanish or its star changes. Under this interpretation, cosmic silence is not surprising. The necessary steps are too difficult to complete within one planetary lifetime. But there is another way to read the same clock. Some apparent delays may reflect the sequential opening of environmental windows rather than extremely improbable biological inventions. A transition could occur late not because evolution spent billions of years failing, but because earlier conditions did not permit it to succeed. The difference is like waiting outside two doors. Behind the first is a lock that accepts the correct key, but the key is extraordinarily difficult to find. Time passes because attempt after attempt fails. Behind the second, the lock has not yet been installed. No key can work. Waiting longer changes nothing until the building itself changes. Earth may have contained both kinds of doors. The origin of life may have depended on a genuinely difficult chemical sequence, or it may have followed once suitable cycles, surfaces, and ingredients were present. Eukaryotic cells may have required a rare symbiosis, while their later expansion also depended on oxygen, nutrients, ecological structure, and stability. Multicellularity may look like one enormous leap, yet it evolved independently in several lineages. A late appearance, by itself, cannot tell us which explanation is correct. This is the midpoint change in our journey. So far, survival has looked like a chain of obstacles. The planet must form correctly. It must retain its atmosphere. It must stabilize its climate. It must begin biology. It must escape microbial simplicity. But the chain may not consist of fixed barriers waiting to be crossed. Some barriers may be constructed or removed by the evolving planet itself. Life and environment do not proceed on separate tracks. Early photosynthetic microbes changed the chemistry around them. Oxygen released into oceans and air reacted first with minerals, dissolved iron, volcanic gases, and organic matter. Only after many sinks were increasingly overcome could oxygen persist more widely. The change harmed organisms adapted to low oxygen conditions, while opening new metabolic possibilities for others. A biological innovation altered the planet. The altered planet then changed which biological innovations could succeed. The same feedback may have repeated in different forms. Organisms changed weathering, nutrient movement, sediments, soils, and atmospheric chemistry. Geological processes rearranged continents, oceans, and climate. Each transformation created habitats while eliminating others. Evolution continually rebuilt the laboratory in which its next experiments occurred. This makes the word habitable depend on what is trying to live. A warm ocean containing chemical energy may support microbes but remain unusable by large oxygen-breathing animals. A planet with enough oxygen for small organisms may not support active bodies with high energy demands. A stable shoreline may favor one kind of prebiotic chemistry, while an ocean-covered world may favor another or prevent the same pathway. There may be no single moment when a planet becomes habitable for everything. Instead, there are overlapping windows. One opens for prebiotic chemistry, another for stable microbial ecosystems, another for cells capable of greater internal complexity, another for large bodies, active movement, or life on land. Some windows may remain open for billions of years. Others may be brief. Some may never open. The environmental window model does not establish that intelligence is common. It changes the proposed reason intelligence may be rare. Under a strict hard steps interpretation, the obstacle lies mainly within the intrinsic improbability of evolutionary transitions. Even a long-lived Earth-like world usually fails because the required innovations almost never occur. Under the environmental interpretation, the obstacle lies more heavily in planetary sequence. A world must pass through the right physical and chemical states in the right order. Its star must provide energy without erasing its atmosphere. Its geology must recycle useful materials. Its biosphere must alter the environment without pushing it permanently beyond recovery. Later opportunities must appear before earlier gains are lost. This alternative may be no more comforting. A rare molecular event needs to happen once. A planetary sequence may need to remain coordinated for billions of years. A world could possess life easily and still never open a window for complex cells. It could produce complex cells but keep its oceans oxygen poor. It could support multicellular organisms only briefly before climate or chemistry changes. It could open every necessary window, but in an order that leaves too little time for the next transition. The environmental window idea is not a settled replacement for the hard steps model. Earth supplies only one completed history. Ancient rocks preserve fragments rather than a continuous recording. The timing of many transitions remains uncertain. An environmental opportunity does not guarantee that evolution will use it. The fact that a transition occurred once does not reveal how frequently it would occur under the same conditions. Both models may contain part of the truth. Some steps may be intrinsically difficult. Others may be delayed by environmental limits. A transition can require a rare innovation and a narrow window at the same time. The origin of a eukaryotic lineage, for example, could depend on an unusual partnership, while its later spread depends on oxygen and nutrient cycles. The responsible conclusion is not that Earth's history proves life rare or common. It is that time alone is not enough. 1 billion years is valuable only if the world remains suitable for the process that needs those years. Evolution cannot accumulate progress toward a transition that the environment continually prevents. When a window opens, it must remain open long enough for ecosystems to expand, diversify, and survive what comes next. The universe may therefore be empty not because every step toward intelligence is an almost impossible throw of the dice, but because very few planets preserve the full sequence of opportunities. Survival may require biology and geology to keep creating conditions for one another without breaking the chain, and even when a window opens, it can close again. Impacts, eruptions, ocean change, climate shifts, and mass extinction do not always erase life. But every collapse consumes time, destroys accumulated complexity, and forces the surviving biosphere to rebuild before the planetary window moves on. The surviving biosphere may begin rebuilding almost immediately. That does not mean it has recovered. After a mass extinction, the first organisms to spread are often those able to tolerate disturbed conditions, reproduce quickly, and use resources that have suddenly become available. Microbes return to water. Opportunistic plants cover damaged ground. Small animals occupy empty habitats. From a distance, the world may look alive again. But an ecosystem is more than the presence of living bodies. It is a network of producers, consumers, predators, decomposers, competitors, parasites, and organisms that physically reshape their surroundings. Energy must move through several trophic levels. Nutrients must circulate. Populations must remain stable enough for long relationships to develop. Reefs, forests, soils, and seafloor communities must be built, not merely occupied. This is why the word recovery can hide several different clocks. One clock measures how quickly life reappears. Another measures primary productivity, the conversion of light or chemical energy into new biological material. A third measures the return of species diversity. Others measure ecological functions, food web structure, resilience, and the restoration of carbon or nutrient cycles. These clocks do not necessarily reach their earlier states together. The extinction at the end of the Cretaceous period provides a clear example. About 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck near the present-day Yucatan Peninsula. The event caused the disappearance of roughly 3/4 of species. Yet life returned to the impact region surprisingly quickly. Organisms entered the crater basin within years. A productive local ecosystem developed within tens of thousands of years. Life did not wait for the crater to become gentle. It entered as soon as conditions allowed. Tens of thousands of years is rapid on a geological clock. It is longer than the entire history of agriculture. And local productivity was not the same as complete ocean recovery. Some marine communities remained unstable for far longer. The organisms performing important carbon cycle functions did not simply return all at once. Species counts, productivity, community stability, and planetary function were telling different stories about the same recovery. This distinction matters for the survival chain. If a catastrophe leaves a few microbial lineages, life itself may continue. If it removes large animals, forests, reef builders, or highly connected communities, the evolutionary structures created over millions of years may disappear in a short interval. The survivors do not receive a stored plan for rebuilding what was lost. Natural selection begins from the organism's genes, relationships, and environments that remain. Recovery is not reversal. The world after an extinction is not the old world slowly becoming visible again. Empty ecological space allows surviving lineages to expand in new directions. Some lost roles may be filled by unrelated organisms. Other roles may remain absent. Predators return with different prey. New forests develop from different plants. The rebuilt ecosystem may eventually become complex, but it carries another history. The end Permian crisis shows how uncertain and interrupted this process can be. Around 252 million years ago, Earth experienced the most severe known mass extinction of the age of visible animal life. More than 90% of marine species may have disappeared. The crisis unfolded in pulses rather than one clean instant. Partial recovery could begin, only to be struck again while ecosystems were still fragile. That interruption matters. The interval between disturbances can be longer than the entire existence of cities and still be too short for complex relationships to stabilize. Heat can persist. Oceans may remain depleted of oxygen. Carbon chemistry can continue fluctuating. Each renewed disturbance removes part of the recovering community and returns the system to an earlier, simpler state. In some freshwater environments after the end Permian event, algae and bacteria repeatedly bloomed, while vegetation and more complex ecosystems remained unstable. Microbial abundance did not mean that a healthy ecosystem had returned. The world was alive. Its recovery machinery remained damaged. Even this story was not uniform. Complex communities survived or returned earlier in some sheltered settings than in others. Some ecological functions persisted because a few organisms could still perform them. A reef might reappear in one region while another remained hostile. A food web could work locally without becoming widespread or stable. This unevenness reveals another layer of fragility. A thin ecosystem can function until another disturbance arrives. Resilience depends partly on redundancy. When several species perform similar roles, the disappearance of one may not stop the function entirely. When only one fragile lineage remains, its loss can break a nutrient pathway, remove a food source, or erase an engineering behavior that many other organisms depend upon. An ecosystem with fewer connections may appear productive, while possessing little capacity to absorb another shock. This is the hidden cost of repeated catastrophe. The loss is not measured only by the number of extinct species. It includes evolutionary experiments that will never recur in the same form. It includes ecological partnerships that took millions of years to assemble. It includes time that cannot be recovered from the life of the planet. Suppose a habitable world has a surface window lasting several billion years. A major collapse near the beginning may leave enough time for complexity to return. The same collapse near the end may not. Several recoveries, each requiring hundreds of thousands or millions of years, can consume the interval during which oceans remain stable, oxygen remains available, and the star remains gentle enough for complex organisms. No catastrophe needs to sterilize the planet. It needs only to delay the next transition. The ocean can return. The lost evolutionary time cannot. This changes how we interpret Earth's survival. The continued existence of life after impacts, eruptions, glaciations, and mass extinctions shows extraordinary persistence. It does not show that evolutionary progress was protected. Microbes survived events that erased dominant animals and entire ecological worlds. Biology continued, but some pathways ended permanently. Across the universe, many inhabited planets may display the same pattern. Life begins. It spreads. Complexity appears in one region or lineage. Then the climate shifts. The ocean loses oxygen. An impact arrives. Or prolonged volcanism destabilizes the atmosphere. The biosphere survives in refuges, but the clock continues moving. The next opportunity may open only after the planet has spent millions of years rebuilding what was previously available. And even if complex life receives enough uninterrupted time, there is no rule requiring evolution to produce a mind capable of studying the stars. Intelligence is not the automatic reward for surviving every earlier disaster. Evolution does not look ahead and decide that a planet needs astronomers. It preserves traits that help organisms leave descendants under the conditions they face. A nervous system can become more flexible when flexibility is useful. It can also remain small, specialized, and efficient when inherited behavior already solves the important problems. Survival may favor a better sense of smell, a harder shell, a faster breeding cycle, or a body that can wait through drought. None of those solutions is a failed attempt at intelligence. Even the word intelligence contains several different abilities. An animal may remember hidden food, navigate over long distances, recognize individuals, learn from others, plan a sequence of actions, manipulate objects, or change its behavior when familiar rules no longer work. These capacities do not have to evolve together. A species may be extraordinary in one domain and ordinary in another, because natural selection builds minds for particular lives, rather than for a universal examination. The living world shows that sophisticated cognition can emerge along very different evolutionary routes. Crows can represent abstract rules and maintain several items in working memory, even though birds lack the layered mammalian neocortex. Octopuses belong to a lineage separated from vertebrates by hundreds of millions of years. Their nervous systems extend through brain and arms, supporting complex sensing, camouflage, manipulation, learning, and problem-solving. Intelligence did not follow one anatomical blueprint. This convergence is important, but it should not be stretched too far. Evolution has repeatedly produced eyes, flight, social cooperation, memory, and forms of flexible behavior because similar problems can reward similar functions. That does not establish that evolution repeatedly produces a species able to construct telescopes, store knowledge outside its body, and convert a planetary environment into detectable technology. A useful cognitive skill can evolve many times without every lineage continuing toward the same destination. A crow does not need metallurgy to open a nut. An octopus does not need writing to explore a reef. Their abilities are successful because they solve the problems their bodies and environments present. Additional brain tissue, longer development, and greater behavioral flexibility must provide enough benefit to repay their biological costs. Neural systems require energy, protection, growth, and continuous maintenance. Learning also introduces risk. An inherited response can be available immediately. A learned response may require time, experience, and mistakes. Intelligence is therefore not free power added to an organism. It is an expensive strategy that becomes useful under particular combinations of uncertainty, opportunity, lifespan, ecology, and social interaction. Researchers continue to debate which pressures drove different forms of cognition. Variable food sources may reward memory. Changing environments may reward behavioral flexibility. Complex social groups may reward recognition, cooperation, deception, and communication. Predator-prey relationships can create cognitive arms races on both sides. No single explanation accounts for every lineage. Intelligence can be pulled in several directions by local ecological problems, rather than pushed toward one universal form. Human intelligence also did not arrive as one completed invention. It emerged within a lineage already possessing primate vision, grasping hands, social learning, memory, and communication. Later changes increased the amount of information that could be processed, shared, and preserved across learning, attention, memory, language, and other systems. Yet an intelligent individual is still not a technological civilization. For that, knowledge must survive the individual who discovered it. The useful behavior must be copied with enough accuracy to persist. Improvements must be preserved rather than repeatedly rediscovered. Information must leave the brain and enter stories, demonstrations, symbols, tools, records, and institutions. The sequence is physical. Social learning allows one individual to copy another. High-fidelity copying preserves a useful technique. External memory prevents knowledge from dying with one person. Specialization allows different people to deepen different skills. Exchange connects those skills. Accumulated improvement produces technology beyond the capacity of any one lifetime. This is cumulative culture. It requires more than intelligence. Flexible intelligence must combine with manipulable anatomy, high-fidelity social learning, external information storage, accessible energy, and enough population contact for improvements to accumulate. A species could possess excellent memory and planning, but lack appendages capable of fine manipulation. It could manipulate objects, but live in an ocean where controlled combustion is unavailable. It could communicate richly while remaining divided into small populations that rarely exchange innovations. It could develop tools that solve immediate problems without entering a self-reinforcing cycle of stored knowledge, specialized labor, measurement, and energy use. Technology is not intelligence made visible automatically. It is intelligence joined to anatomy, materials, culture, population, environment, and time. This distinction makes cosmic silence less mysterious. A living planet may produce complex animals. Several may become clever. One may develop flexible social learning. Yet none may cross the narrow cultural and physical pathway that leads to radio, spacecraft, industrial chemistry, or structures detectable across interstellar distances. Earth offers no frequency for this transition. Many lineages evolved elaborate nervous systems. Only one surviving species created a technological civilization. That fact does not prove the transition is almost impossible. Evolutionary history is not a controlled experiment. Other intelligent lineages were never given identical bodies, environments, and opportunities. It does show that intelligence can flourish in many forms for immense periods without producing the kind of evidence astronomers are currently equipped to find. There is also no promise that a technologically capable species will appear early enough. Large, complex life arose late in Earth's habitable interval. Human technological activity occupies only a thin, final layer of that history. If earlier climates, extinctions, or evolutionary transitions had taken longer, the same star could have brightened over a world filled with intelligent animals that never reached a detectable phase. The universe may therefore contain minds that remain hidden inside oceans, forests, clouds, or forms of matter we have not imagined. It may contain learning, cooperation, memory, and perception without cities or transmitters. Cosmic silence may not separate living worlds from dead ones. It may separate technological worlds from every other successful way of being alive. But once intelligence enters technology, the survival problem changes again. For the first time, a species can alter its planet deliberately and at enormous speed. It can redirect rivers, release stored carbon, transform ecosystems, manipulate biology, and build machines whose consequences extend beyond the intentions of any one individual. The mind that allows a civilization to become visible may also create the next filter it must survive. This is often described too simply. A species discovers dangerous technology and destroys itself. That may happen, but the more general danger is not one invention. It is the interval in which a civilization becomes planetary before it learns to think on planetary timescales. Before technology, most organisms alter only a limited portion of their surroundings. A tree changes soil and shade. A reef changes currents and provides shelter. Microbes can transform an atmosphere, but they do so through countless generations acting without foresight. A technological species is different. It can identify concentrated sources of energy, understand the structure of matter, and deliberately redirect processes that once operated only through geology, climate, or evolution. This power does not make destruction inevitable. It makes the consequences of error larger and faster. The first mechanism is planetary overshoot. A civilization extracts material and energy faster than the surrounding systems can replace, absorb, or recycle them. The actions may be individually useful. Fuel moves food and medicine. Fertilizer increases crop production. Dams store water and generate electricity. Forests are cleared for farms, roads, and cities. Each decision solves an immediate problem. Together, they can alter climate, soils, rivers, oceans, and ecosystems. The physical sequence is simple. Concentrated energy allows rapid planetary alteration. The consequences arrive more slowly. Institutions respond later still. By the time the damage is obvious, the civilization may depend on the processes causing it. This is delayed consequence. A species can become powerful enough to change its world before becoming organized enough to manage the full result. The second mechanism is concentrated destructive power. Advanced technology can place immense capability into the hands of a small number of people, machines, or institutions. Nuclear weapons demonstrate the principle. A large exchange would not need to split the planet apart. Blast, fire, radiation, and smoke could damage food systems far beyond the regions directly attacked. The civilization remains physically surrounded by oceans, soil, and atmosphere. Yet the thin biological layer feeding it can be disrupted for years. The same principle extends beyond weapons. Biotechnology, automated systems, and other high-capability tools can spread or act more rapidly than the institutions designed to test, contain, and govern them. That does not prove that any one technology will cause global catastrophe. It reveals a recurring imbalance. Capability can grow faster than control. The third mechanism is systemic coupling. Technological civilizations build networks because networks are efficient. Energy grids balance supply across large regions. Transport systems move food and materials. Communication links coordinate institutions. Finance connects distant markets. Manufacturing depends on specialized supply chains. Medicine depends on laboratories, refrigeration, data, transport, and skilled labor. Connection allows rapid cooperation. It also creates pathways through which failure can travel. Environmental stress can weaken food and energy systems. Weakened systems can increase political conflict. Conflict can reduce cooperation. Reduced cooperation makes every additional crisis harder to contain. A civilization that could survive any one pressure may fail when several arrive before recovery is complete. The danger is not always dramatic. The system may continue working while resilience quietly disappears. A small number of crop varieties may feed enormous populations. A few transport routes may carry essential materials. A narrow set of institutions may coordinate water, medicine, energy, and information. Efficiency rises, redundancy falls. Then a drought, disease, software failure, conflict, or natural disaster removes several supports together. The civilization discovers that the system was productive but brittle. This is the technological version of an ecosystem after extinction. It still functions. It has lost the depth that allowed it to recover. None of this shows that technological civilization normally destroys itself. We know of only one. It continues to exist. Humanity has also used technology to eliminate diseases, repair part of the ozone layer, monitor environmental change, reduce many forms of mortality, and build institutions intended to restrain dangerous capabilities. Coordination is difficult. It is also real. Technology creates tools for prevention as well as destruction. The Great Filter has not been located here. Self-destruction remains a plausible explanation for cosmic silence because technological power can rise quickly, while biological instincts and political systems change more slowly. But no observation tells us how often other civilizations reach this stage, what dangers they face, or how successfully they adapt. The strongest title-born insight is narrower. The danger is not intelligence itself. It is the interval in which a species becomes powerful enough to transform a planet before it becomes wise enough to protect the planetary systems on which its power depends. A civilization must recognize that atmosphere, ocean, ecosystem, infrastructure, information, and security are not separate problems. They are parts of one survival system. It must manage immediate competition while preserving a future no living individual will completely experience. It must prevent short-term advantages from accumulating into long-term fragility. It must build institutions that learn before consequences become irreversible. This is difficult because natural selection did not prepare any species to govern a planet. It prepared organisms to survive local environments, compete for resources, cooperate in groups, and respond to visible threats. Planetary danger often arrives slowly. The cause may be distributed. The reward for restraint may belong to later generations. The cost of restraint may be immediate. Technology compresses power while stretching consequence across time. A species may therefore need a new form of adaptation. Not a new organ. A new way of coordinating knowledge, incentives, responsibility, and memory. If a civilization succeeds, technology could become a survival advantage rather than a filter. It could monitor asteroids, control disease, repair ecosystems, manage climate risks, store knowledge beyond any one culture, and eventually protect life beyond one planet. Knowledge does not guarantee survival. It changes some dangers from blind accidents into problems that can be recognized and partly defended against. That may be the real threshold. A civilization must learn to become powerful without becoming fragile. And it must maintain that balance not merely for a decade or a century, but long enough to overlap with another civilization looking into the same dark sky. And it must maintain that balance long enough to overlap with another civilization looking into the same dark sky. This may be harder than merely surviving. Two technological civilizations can arise in the same galaxy and remain separated by time. One may disappear 10,000 years before the other builds its first radio telescope. Their homeworlds continue circling their stars. Signals from the earlier society may continue travelling outward, but no living community exists at both ends of a conversation. The Milky Way is more than 13 billion years old. Human technology occupies only the thinnest edge of that history. Radio experiments began little more than a century ago. Our ability to conduct systematic searches for artificial signals is younger still. Compared with the life of the galaxy, our detectable period has barely begun. There is no reason to assume that another civilization's technological period must last for millions of years. A society might collapse. It might change beyond recognition. It might abandon powerful emissions. It might move activity underground. It might replace radio systems with methods we cannot detect. Its biological population may survive, while the techno-signatures available to us disappear. Civilizational lifetime and detectable lifetime are therefore not the same quantity. This distinction changes the cosmic question. Instead of asking only how many technological species have ever existed, we must ask how many are producing detectable evidence at the same time our instruments are capable of receiving it. The expected number of currently active emitters depends partly on two unknowns: how often detectable civilizations appear, how long their emissions remain visible. If the appearance rate is low, few signals exist. If the detectable lifetime is short, many civilizations may have appeared across galactic history, while almost none remain detectable now. Consider a simplified example. Suppose one detectable civilization appears somewhere in the Milky Way every 10,000 years. If each remains detectable for only 1,000 years, most of galactic history contains no active emitter at all. If each remains detectable for 100,000 years, several may coexist. The numbers are invented to show the mechanism, not to estimate reality. Longevity changes overlap. Even overlap in time does not guarantee contact. A civilization 5,000 light-years away is seen as it was 5,000 years ago. The signal crossing our telescope tonight began its journey before many modern nations existed. Any answer we transmit would require another 5,000 years to arrive. A single exchange would span 10,000 years. The civilization must remain capable of listening throughout that interval, or leave instruments and institutions that can continue without it. The galaxy therefore contains two kinds of time. There is local time, the years during which a society builds, communicates, changes, or collapses. And there is travel time, the years required for information to cross the space between stars. Technology may move quickly within a civilization, while information remains limited by the speed of light. No improvement in computing power removes that delay. A society can produce a message instantly and still wait centuries or millennia for a distant recipient to receive it. This makes short technological lifetimes especially isolating. A civilization may broadcast for 500 years. Its signal expands outward as a shell moving at light speed. When the transmitters fall silent, the leading edge continues traveling, followed 500 light-years behind by the final transmission. The civilization can be gone while its signal remains present elsewhere in the galaxy. A dead civilization can remain visible, but only briefly from any one location. If an omnidirectional signal lasted 100 years, its radiation shell would have a thickness of about 100 light-years. Earth must lie inside that moving layer, while a telescope is observing the correct part of the spectrum. Look before the leading edge arrives, and there is nothing. Look after the final edge has passed, and the sky is quiet again. Directional beams make the alignment even narrower. A powerful transmission aimed toward one star may be visible across great distances while passing unnoticed by nearly every other system. Rotating beacons create recurring opportunities, but illuminate each direction only intermittently. Leakage from ordinary communication may be weaker and less organized than a deliberate message. The existence of a civilization does not place its entire technological output into every part of the sky. Earth demonstrates the difference between technological activity and detectability. Our strongest signals are not transmitted continuously in every direction. Most ordinary signs of human technology would be difficult to detect from another star with instruments comparable to ours. An observer in the correct direction at the correct time might notice an unusually powerful transmission. Another observer, closer to Earth, could miss us entirely. A civilization identical to ours could therefore exist in the galaxy without appearing as a bright technological beacon. Its strongest transmissions might never point toward Earth. Its atmospheric pollution might be too subtle for our instruments. Its structures might be unresolved beside the glare of its star. Its period of maximum visibility might last only a few centuries before technology changes. The absence of detection would not prove that the civilization was absent. It would reveal a mismatch among distance, signal, instrument, direction, and time. The deeper lesson is simple. A crowded galactic history can produce an empty galactic present. Thousands of civilizations might arise across billions of years, each living long by human standards. If their detectable windows occupy different eras, none ever knows the others existed. Their cities become ruins. Their satellites fall from orbit. Their atmospheric traces are diluted or buried. Their final signals cross stars that have not yet produced listeners. Cosmic loneliness may therefore be created by timing rather than absolute rarity. The chain from planet formation to technology may succeed repeatedly, while the final products fail to overlap. But time is only one dimension of the silence. Even two civilizations that coexist may be separated by distances that weaken their emissions, delay every exchange, and leave only narrow observational chances. Before silence can be treated as evidence of extinction, we must ask how much of the galaxy our searches have truly been capable of hearing. The answer is much less than the night sky suggests. A radio telescope may appear to listen into an enormous distance, but it does not hear every signal crossing that distance. It observes one region of the sky through a selected range of frequencies for a limited period with a particular sensitivity and a search system designed to recognize certain patterns. A signal can pass through Earth and remain undiscovered because it arrived from the wrong direction, at the wrong frequency, between observations, or in a form the software rejected as noise. Distance creates the first difficulty. Electromagnetic radiation spreads as it travels. If a transmitter radiates equally in every direction, the same energy must cover a larger spherical area with every additional light year. Double the distance, and the received intensity falls to 1/4. Increase the distance tenfold, and it falls to 1/100th. A civilization does not need to stop transmitting to disappear from our instruments. It only needs to be far enough away. This is why deliberate beacons and ordinary technological leakage must be treated differently. A powerful, tightly directed beam may remain detectable across thousands of light years if it points toward Earth. The unintended emissions from communication systems, electrical infrastructure, or radar are generally weaker, broader, or intermittent. They may become indistinguishable from natural background radiation after crossing only a small portion of the galaxy. The physical chain is clear. Transmission power leaves the source. Geometric spreading weakens it. The receiver's sensitivity sets a threshold. The observation window determines whether the signal is present while we look. Recognition determines whether the recorded pattern is preserved or dismissed. Failure at any stage produces silence. The signal's structure creates a second difficulty. Traditional radio searches often concentrate on extremely narrow frequency bands because many natural cosmic sources spread their energy across wider ranges. A narrow, persistent tone can therefore appear artificial. Search algorithms also examine how a signal drifts in frequency as the transmitter and receiver move on rotating and orbiting worlds. This strategy is sensible. It is still a choice. Human technology has increasingly shifted toward broadband, distributed, low-power communication. A civilization following a similar path might not produce the kind of simple narrowband tone many surveys were designed to find. Its combined radioactivity could resemble a faint patch of ordinary emission and be removed as background noise. Time narrows the search again. A telescope may observe one star for several minutes or several hours. A transmitter might operate once each day, once each year, or only during rare experiments. A laser pulse could cross the telescope's field between two exposures. A rotating beacon might point toward Earth only briefly. Even a repeating signal may be missed if its cycle is longer than the observation. Imagine standing beside a dark ocean while a distant lighthouse flashes once every 10 hours. Looking for 9 hours and seeing nothing would feel persuasive. It would still be too soon. The problem becomes larger because astronomers do not know which frequencies another civilization would choose. Earth's atmosphere blocks some wavelengths and allows others through. Interstellar gas and dust affect different frequencies differently. A society may select wavelengths suited to its own atmosphere, technology, energy limits, and purpose. It may communicate locally through methods that leak almost nothing into interstellar space. Searching the entire radio spectrum at every sensitivity, direction, bandwidth, signal duration, polarization, and repetition rate creates an immense multidimensional volume, sometimes called the cosmic haystack. Exist searches have sampled only a tiny fraction of that volume. The comparison is not with draining Earth's oceans and finding no fish. It is closer to examining a small pool and deciding what lives in every sea. Radio is only one part of the search. Technology might reveal itself through three broad classes of evidence: transmitted signals, atmospheric or thermal effects, engineered structures. Each class opens another narrow window. A radio or laser signal must be powerful, directed, timed, and recognizable. Industrial gases must be abundant, persistent, and distinguishable from natural chemistry. Waste heat must be strong enough to separate from dust and ordinary astrophysical processes. A large orbiting structure may alter the light of a star, but only if geometry places it across the star from Earth's point of view. Even an advanced society could build technology that remains below these thresholds. More capability does not always produce more visibility. A civilization may become efficient. It may recycle material, reduce waste heat, replace powerful broadcasts with narrow local networks, or move computation into environments designed to contain energy. Its technological maturity could make it quieter rather than brighter. This possibility is easy to miss because human searches often imagine expansion as the natural result of technological success. Yet a successful society may value stability, efficiency, privacy, or local development. It may have no reason to fill the galaxy with signals or machines. Detectability depends on choices as well as capability. Recognition may be the deepest limitation. A telescope records photons and radio waves, not explanations. Unusual data are first compared with instrument errors, human interference, known astrophysical objects, atmospheric effects, and statistical accidents. That caution is essential. Without it, ordinary phenomena could repeatedly become false announcements of alien technology. But caution also means that a genuine signal might not be recognized immediately. It may appear in a data archive collected for another purpose. Its structure may not match existing algorithms. It may require repeated observations that never occur. A technological phenomenon could be physically accessible to our instruments while remaining conceptually invisible because no one knows what pattern to seek. Some evidence may already be reaching us but remain unrecognized. Other evidence may be understandable in principle while lying beyond the sensitivity or spatial reach of present instruments. The silence above us is therefore filtered many times. A civilization must produce a detectable effect. That effect must travel toward Earth without becoming too weak. It must arrive while humanity possesses suitable instruments. A telescope must observe the correct direction, frequency, and moment. Its software must preserve the signal. Researchers must distinguish it from nature and human interference. From Earth, all of these different failures look identical. Nothing confirmed. This does not make every empty observation meaningless. Carefully designed searches can rule out specific kinds of transmitters around specific stars at defined sensitivities. As surveys grow, they reduce the region in which particular technologies could remain hidden. But they cannot yet rule out technological life in general. The galaxy may be silent because civilizations rarely survive. It may also appear silent because distance, timing, weakness, direction, efficiency, and human assumptions hide them. We have now reached the central uncertainty. Every earlier stage offers a possible barrier: planetary formation, atmospheric loss, climate instability, the origin of life, complex cells, environmental windows, extinction, intelligence, technological danger, short lifetimes, and limited detection. Any one of them could be common enough to explain the sky. Yet the silence itself does not tell us which barrier is doing the work. This is where the idea of the Great Filter becomes useful, and where it is easiest to misunderstand. The Great Filter is not an object hidden somewhere in space. It is not a measured force. It is not one known extinction event. It is not a law stating that every civilization must destroy itself. It is a way of describing the combined improbability between lifeless matter and a form of life that becomes durable and visible on a cosmic scale. If planets are numerous, the galaxy is old, and technological life can spread or leave large observable effects, then the absence of confirmed evidence suggests that at least one transition in the sequence may be unusually difficult. Or one of those assumptions may be wrong. The evidence does not identify one universal filter. It supports a broader, cumulative filter possibility in which different worlds fail at different stages. The filter could be behind us. Perhaps planets with long-lived oceans are rare. Perhaps life almost never begins. Perhaps simple cells usually remain simple. Perhaps complex organisms repeatedly lose their opportunity before intelligence appears. If one early transition is extremely improbable, then humanity may already have passed the narrowest part of the chain. The filter could also be ahead. Technological societies may commonly emerge but remain detectable only briefly. They may destabilize their environments, fail to coordinate powerful technologies, lose the institutions maintaining complex systems, or choose forms of existence that leave little astronomical trace. Under that interpretation, our presence at the technological stage would not show that the most difficult transition has already occurred, or there may be no single filter at all. The probability can be reduced by many smaller barriers. Planet formation removes some worlds. Atmospheric escape removes more. Climate instability closes further windows. The origin of life, complex cells, multicellularity, intelligence, cultural accumulation, technological survival, longevity, and detectability each reduce the number continuing onward. No one step needs to be impossible if the combined chain is restrictive enough. This is why the filter has no known address. Every observation changes only selected parts of the map. If scientists discovered fossil microbes on Mars that arose independently from Earth life, it would suggest that biology began at least twice within one planetary system. That would weaken the idea that the origin of life is always the dominant barrier. It would not show that complex cells, intelligence, or technological survival are common. If a nearby ocean moon contained an independent living biosphere, the same conclusion would become stronger. Life might begin readily where water, chemistry, and energy persist. Yet a universe rich in microbes could remain almost completely silent if later transitions are far more difficult. Finding complex multicellular life on an exoplanet would move the uncertainty farther along the chain. Finding technology would move it farther still. But even one confirmed civilization would not immediately reveal the survival rate of civilizations in general. We would need to know its age, history, visibility, and whether its technology had remained stable across long periods. The reverse is also true. A barren sample does not prove that life rarely begins. Evidence may be absent from the particular environment examined, destroyed by later change, or hidden beyond the reach of the instruments used. An empty radio search does not prove that no civilization exists around the observed star. It rules out only signals within the powers, frequencies, directions, and times that the search could detect. Evidence must therefore be interpreted conditionally. The silence is real as an observational result. No extraterrestrial life or technology has been confirmed. The meaning of that silence remains underdetermined because several different histories produce the same sky. There is also a mathematical reason for caution. Many estimates of extraterrestrial civilization multiply uncertain factors. The fraction of planets that become habitable, begin life, produce intelligence, develop detectable technology, and remain visible for some period. When each number is poorly known, replacing it with one confident average can create a misleadingly precise answer. Allowing the unknown parameters to vary across broad ranges leaves room for a substantial possibility that humanity is alone, even without assuming advanced civilizations always destroy themselves. That is not evidence that the universe is empty. It is evidence that uncertainty itself is large enough to change the conclusion. This does not dissolve every version of the mystery. It reveals that the apparent paradox partly depends on expectations built from quantities we cannot yet measure. If the chance of one crucial transition is extremely small, a vast number of planets may still produce only one technological species. If the transitions are easier, but detectable lifetimes are short, many species may appear without overlapping. If civilizations are long-lived but quiet, they may remain present while escaping every search we have attempted. Each explanation relocates the difficulty. The great filter is therefore less like one locked door and more like an unknown pattern of losses along a road. We can see one traveller, Earth, standing at the technological stage. We can see many planets near the beginning of the road. We cannot yet see which portions are crowded, which are nearly empty, or where most journeys end. This uncertainty can easily be turned into fear. If microbes are found elsewhere, one may argue that the filter must be ahead. That conclusion would be too strong. A second origin would update one part of the chain. It would not measure every later step. The difficulty of eukaryotic cells, complex bodies, intelligence, technology, and long survival could still vary by enormous amounts. The opposite reassurance is also unjustified. Our survival until now does not demonstrate that technological maturity is easy. Human civilization has existed for only a brief interval compared with geological time. We have not yet shown that a planetary technological system can remain stable for thousands, millions, or billions of years. The safest conclusion is narrower. Somewhere between a lifeless world and a long-lived, detectable civilization, the combined probability may be low, unless our expectations about visibility, expansion, or longevity are wrong. We do not know whether the largest reduction comes from one extraordinary step, several moderate steps, short detectable lifetimes, weak expansion, or limitations in our searches. The filter has no address because the evidence has not given it one. And perhaps the title's deepest possibility does not require us to locate it precisely. The universe may appear empty because survival is not one achievement. It is a sequence that must continue working. Chemistry must become biology. Biology must become complexity. Complexity must endure catastrophe. Intelligence must become cumulative culture. Technology must avoid destroying its supports. A civilization must remain visible long enough for another world to notice. Every stage can succeed locally. The whole chain may still almost never succeed completely. We can now return to the silent sky with a more careful answer. Not that emptiness has been proved, but that lasting, detectable survival may demand an extraordinary continuity across billions of years. That extraordinary continuity is the answer the silence allows us to consider. The universe may be empty because survival is almost impossible. Not because life must fail at one dramatic moment. Not because every civilization necessarily destroys itself. And not because a single invisible barrier stands between chemistry and the stars. The deeper possibility is quieter. A planet must form with enough of the right material. It must keep useful elements accessible rather than locking them permanently inside its core. It must retain an atmosphere without turning that atmosphere into a furnace or allowing it to thin into near vacuum. Its climate must move without losing every refuge. Its oceans, rocks, gases, and star must continue interacting within a range that allows chemistry to remain active. Then chemistry must cross a boundary we still do not understand. Molecules must become a system that maintains itself, uses energy, stores information, and produces imperfect descendants. If that transition occurs, life must remain present while the planet continues changing. It may survive as microbes for billions of years and never become more complex. Complex cells may require an unusual partnership. Multicellular organisms may require environmental windows that open only after oceans, atmosphere, geology, and biology have already transformed one another. Every success becomes the starting condition for another test. A biosphere can survive catastrophe while losing the complexity it spent millions of years building. Intelligence can evolve without developing cumulative technology. Technology can rise without remaining stable. A civilization can endure without becoming visible. Two visible civilizations can exist in the same galaxy and still miss one another because their detectable periods do not overlap. This is what the title means when it speaks of survival. It does not mean simply staying alive for another day. It means preserving possibility. Each stage must leave enough time, stability, energy, information, and ecological depth for the next stage to occur. A world can be alive and still close its future. It can hold oceans and never begin biology. It can host microbes and never produce complex cells. It can support intelligent animals and never build a transmitter. It can build transmitters and fall silent before another listener appears. The universe does not need to destroy every world in the same way. It needs only to allow different worlds to stop at different points. That would create a sky exactly like the one above us. Rich in stars, rich in planets, empty of confirmed voices. But this remains a hypothesis. What is known is limited and important. Planets are common. Some occupy conditions where liquid water may be possible. Earth has supported life for billions of years. Complex life appeared late compared with the age of the planet. Technological civilization appeared later still. No extraterrestrial life, signal, structure, or technology has been confirmed. What is strongly inferred is that lasting habitability depends on interacting planetary systems rather than orbital distance alone. Atmospheres can be lost. Climate feedbacks can stabilize or destabilize worlds. Extinctions can preserve life while erasing ecological complexity. Detectability depends on signal strength, direction, timing, distance, instrument sensitivity, and recognition. What remains debated is the location and even the shape of the hardest barriers. Life may begin readily or rarely. Eukaryotic complexity may depend on an extraordinary event, an environmental opportunity, or both. Intelligence may be strongly convergent under some conditions, or historically contingent. Civilizations may commonly collapse, become quiet, remain local, or persist for periods we cannot yet imagine. And what remains unresolved is the most basic question of all. Are we early, rare, hidden among many others, or almost alone? The present sky cannot answer. Its silence is too incomplete. We have listened for only a brief interval. We have searched limited frequencies, selected stars, narrow times, and specific kinds of evidence. Most distant planets remain unresolved points or faint changes in starlight. A quiet observation can rule out a particular signal under particular conditions. It cannot yet rule out life in every form. So the silence does not prove emptiness. Yet it teaches us something. It teaches us that existence and visibility are separated by a long road. At the beginning of tonight, we imagined a planet that looked promising from far away. It had clouds, continents, water, and a thin blue edge of atmosphere. From a telescope, it might have seemed almost like a second Earth. Now that image has changed. We can see how much may be hidden beneath that blue edge. The water may be temporary. The atmosphere may be thinning. The climate may be approaching a threshold. The chemistry may never become biology. The microbes may remain microbes. A civilization may have existed there before its final signal passed our system. Or it may not arise until long after humanity is gone. The planet is no longer simply habitable or uninhabitable. It is a history in progress. That may be the most useful correction of the entire journey. Habitability is not a label placed on a world from the outside. Survival is not a possession a species earns once. Both are continuing relationships among matter, energy, time, and change. Earth is part of that same uncertainty. We know that our planet completed every earlier transition required for us to be here. We do not know whether those transitions were common, rare, or unique in their combination. We know that humanity has become capable of altering planetary systems. We do not know how long a technological civilization can remain powerful, stable, and wise enough to preserve its future. This does not turn the great filter into a prediction of doom. The absence of an address matters. If the hardest barriers are behind us, then our existence is an extraordinary inheritance. If some lie ahead, knowing that possibility gives us something earlier life never possessed. The ability to recognize danger before it becomes unavoidable. A planet cannot choose the mass it formed with. A microbe cannot plan for the future brightening of its star. A civilization can sometimes examine its own risks. It can measure atmospheric change. It can watch asteroids. It can monitor disease. It can protect ecosystems. It can reduce dangerous weapons. It can build systems that recover from failure. Knowledge does not guarantee survival. It changes survival from a purely accidental outcome into something that can be partly defended. Perhaps that is what makes technological intelligence so unusual, if it is unusual. It is not merely the ability to dominate an environment. It is the ability to understand dependence on that environment. The universe may be empty because almost no world keeps every link intact for long enough. Or it may only appear empty because living worlds are faint, distant, separated by time, and difficult to recognize. Both possibilities remain open. The strongest answer is therefore not that cosmic emptiness has been established. It is that detectable civilization requires an extraordinary continuity that no planet is guaranteed to achieve. Formation must leave opportunity. Climate must preserve it. Life must begin. Evolution must expand what life can do. Catastrophe must fail to erase too much. Intelligence must find a path into lasting culture. Technology must protect the conditions that made technology possible. And somewhere beyond all of that, another world must be listening at the right moment. Perhaps no one has completed the entire chain nearby. Perhaps others completed it long ago, and their light has not reached us. Perhaps a signal is already crossing the darkness, moving quietly between stars while Earth turns beneath it. For now, the sky remains silent. But silence is no longer a simple absence. It is the space between possibilities, and the record of how much must endure before one living world can know another is there.